back at the day, so exactly there I was driving BMW M4 and Volvo XC90. So now let's move to the things that I love and things that Audi can make better of E-Tron, which I think they do with the introduction of Q8 E-Tron. Yeah, also like side note, Q8 E-Tron is kind of funny because a lot of people like mistook my E-Tron for Q5, because when they asked me like what do you drive and I said E-Tron, yeah, which E-Tron, because one thing that they know, there was A3 E-Tron and Q7 E-Tron, which was plug-in hybrid, and they didn't know that there's a car called E-Tron, and a lot of people like mistook it for Q5. I think that's why now Audi put Q8 in it. So I think so it's a statement that E-Tron belongs actually to the kind of like to the higher tier of Audi cars or of Audi production cars, and that through that they can also justify the price hike of E-Tron. By the way, we are now in really bad time to buy new car because of the inflation and also because of the interest. So yeah, so there's no wonder, but E-Tron is only getting more and more expensive. Like for example, today you cannot get an E-Tron for 68,000 euro new. You just cannot. It's just not doable. All right, so first things that I love. As I mentioned before, the looks. E-Tron is, in general, in my opinion, it's just a good looking car. And I mean, like every time I park it, and I really like to just lock the car and unlock the car because I want to see the light animation. And in general, the whole silhouette is just works, and especially if you also like get your E-Tron with 22-inch wheels, it's just amazing. It's just amazing. That thing looks so good. And also there's also, I think, like for me, apart from the price that I pay for the leasing over 3 years, it's also like the looks actually outweighs the lags that E-Tron has, which I knew it was the range, but the car is big, the boot is big, and also like it's just so comfy. So that's why I took it for 3 years. But the looks is actually one of the main factor that makes me pull the trigger. So yeah, as I already mentioned before, the whole thing, like from the looks department, they are just doing it right. So number 2 things that I love from E-Tron is the air suspension. So all E-Trons are equipped stock with air suspension. So this is not the most comfortable air suspension that I have experienced. So for example, like air suspension from Porsche Panamera, for example, is a lot better than the one in E-Tron. And also like air suspension from Mercedes S-Class is known to be a benchmark for kind of like for comfortable ride. And we haven't yet talked about the air suspension from Rolls-Royce or Bentley, but it doesn't have that kind of like that level of comfort that Porsche Panamera or S-Class, for example, can offer you. But it is actually quite good. Also, like we also need to remember it is then stock, so you don't need to pay for it. It's not even an option. You just get it. If you get an E-Tron, you don't need to pay for it. It always has air suspension. And also like one thing that I really like about having air suspension in E-Tron, well, besides for the comfort, it really takes out all of the road's imperfection. But one gimmick that I really love about the air suspension in E-Tron is that every time you end your drive on the autobahn, or if you go over 120 km per hour, the car would lift itself and you can literally feel it. I mean, it's kind of normal, but you know, like I haven't had a daily with air suspension and it just feels so cool, and you can literally feel the car like lifted. And every time I put it also on Quattro mode, like permanent all-wheel drive, because I think like last year was really cold, so at one point I used the permanent Quattro because the street was freezing. Literally it was like a hard ice on the autobahn, which is not perfect. So I think like it's gonna look so funny from outside because like my E-Tron is normally riding really low because on eco mode is gonna go low, but on permanent Quattro mode it will just lift the ride and it just look like a proper SUV. So it's kind of like a gimmick, but it's a nice thing to have, and having an air suspension, it's just perfect. So if you like comfort, and this is how I see it, if I have a daily, sometimes after a long day of work, I just want this kind of like comfort. I want like my car to be quiet, that that also like a really nice sound system is also nice, but like this air suspension, it just like give you this like supple ride. It's just amazing. The last thing that I love from my E-Tron is the subscription model. Yeah, you know it, and it's very popular to hate it because right now BMW is just taking the piss. Like, it's even like people think it's funny, like, take a look, what if like your subscription for power steer is running out when you're driving on the motorway? It doesn't work like that. And if you're gonna say, yeah, that's only a joke, like, I think you need to make your own experience and really try it out. But for me, this kind of like, Audi called it function on demand. So you can literally buy some function over a period of time, and if you don't need it, you can unsubscribe it, so you can deactivate it, so you don't need to pay. And in general, Audi has around 8 until 10 functions in the catalog, so it's not really that many options that you need to pay, or you can pay for it. So this is kind of like the concept. If you don't want to pay for the full price of an option, let's say the LED matrix function, which costs around 1,300, if you want to pay for the full function, which you can. And it's gonna cost you around 126 euro, if I'm not mistaken, for 3 months. I can be mistaken. And for me, this is perfect because the car, like my E-Tron, was not ordered, so I didn't spec that car. I just bought the car as I saw it. So my E-Tron, by default, didn't have matrix LED option, and it was not spec'd with this animation of LED. So, and that's an option. So it's called like E-Tron LED signature something. So it's an option. Yeah, and I activated these options. For example, the signature lights, the signature animation. I think like I activated it for 1 year. So they unlocked the function on demand several months after I got the car. So they already told me that's gonna be, you will be able to unlock the matrix LED function, because actually the E-Tron was already installed with the hardware for LED matrix. But if you spec LED matrix, they're gonna then unlock the function. Or you can also just buy on functions on demand, which I did. And for the matrix LED lights, I only need it in the winter, for example, because here in Europe it gets dark a little bit sooner and it stays dark a little bit longer. So I only subscribe to LED matrix light kind of like for 3 and 4 months in a year. So that's gonna be around over the time that I had E-Tron, means I spend roughly around 450 euro in comparison to unlocking it for the, if I spec LED matrix lights, it's gonna cost me 1,300 euro. So I think people can save money on that. So there's a potential to save money on that. You just need to know if you really need it or not. So this is not like a clear cut, because for some people, oh yeah, it's cool, and people get used to it. So they actually hope that people just gonna buy it over time. And if you don't buy it out like straight out from the beginning, you will end up actually it will end up costing you more. But for me, it's actually quite useful. And also, like, one thing that I directly bought when the function on demand went online was Apple CarPlay. So it costs around €300 for unlimited access, means you just kind of like buy a function for your MMI. But it costs €300, and I think that's also the same price that you get from BMW if you want to unlock the Apple CarPlay function. Now we are moving to the things that Audi can make better. With that, I mean like 3 things that I really hate. So the first thing that I hate from my E-Tron was the suspension. So as much as I love the air suspension, it also has its own problems, and this problem is known. I think it has something to do with the bushings or with some parts of the suspension. So if it's raining, and I mean really raining, so in wet conditions, my E-Tron will make really funny steely noise every time I went full left. So if I want to park in, so I turn left, it will make noise as like kind of like noise of a broken bed or something like that, you know, like this kind of like bed from steel. So it will make that noise, and that really annoyed me. But it's a known problem, and so I went to the forum and I found out that's a known problem, and everyone knows this, and there's also a solution for that. But I didn't really care about that because that only happens if it's really raining, and in Germany it doesn't really rain that often. And yeah, and because I didn't buy the car, I couldn't care less, and luckily I didn't buy the car. So the second thing that I don't like about my E-Tron is Apple CarPlay. Funnily enough, it's Apple CarPlay. So I paid for it. So I paid for Apple CarPlay. So it's like €300. And this is like one of the more annoying Apple CarPlay system, like MMI, that I ever encountered. So sometimes it just has its own brain. Sometimes it just wouldn't start. And if it wouldn't start, sometimes I need to restart the car. So literally, I turned off the car, went out, closed the door, wait a bit, open the door, and start it again. And after that, the CarPlay just started, not even waiting. But the worst scenario is if it simply disconnects during the drive. I don't know about you, but I don't like if the infotainment system just mess with my playlist flow, like, you know, especially if you're stuck in traffic, and the MMI just decided, okay boss, you know what, I'm just gonna stop playing music. And there's like two things. There are like two things that I normally do to get the music going. Either I then turn on the Bluetooth and then connect via Bluetooth, or I restart the car, or I try it again by unplugging the cable and plug it again. But it's just a lot of hassle only for Apple CarPlay. But luckily, like the newer cars, like from this year or last year, like from 2023, especially like from the 3 biggest German manufacturers, BMW, Mercedes, and Audi, actually they're getting a lot better. Even like Volkswagen also get it, so they get it right. As soon as you plug it, Apple CarPlay will just run, which is perfect. But that was not the case with my E-Tron. Alright, that was Apple CarPlay. And the last thing that I don't like about my E-Tron is the paint. The paint was a pain in the ass, literally. So after 3 years of having E-Tron, of course there was like a little bit of, let me say it, like some scratches or some imperfections on the car because the car is being used. But apart from all of the stuff that I know that has happened to the car, that I already also knew where it came from, there was like several kind of, it's not scratches, like the paint just peel off on certain parts, and nothing happened. I didn't hit anybody, and my car is parked in like in the basement, so it was not sitting outside on the street or something, so no one can do anything about it. But the car just peeled off. It was on the front bumper, so it was like this part where, like the plastic part of the car, actually the paint just peel off, and I needed to pay for that. And I didn't even hit anything, and you know, there there was no ice on it, or like if I do mistakes or with when I was de-icing the car and scratch it, there might be an explanation for that. But for that one thing, there was no explanation for that. And now let's move to my experience like returning the car. So so my friend actually returned the car from me because when the contract is up, I was not literally, also I was on holiday actually, and at the end I needed to pay around 1,800 euro for all of the imperfections that the car had. I also chipped actually my one of the wheels, so that's actually quite fair. But 1,800 euro over 3 years is actually quite good, because alone for the wheels they charge around 1,200 euro, so it's around 600 euro for all the imperfections that the car had. But yeah, so in all, ownership of E-Tron in 3 years, good looking car, and the driving experience is actually really nice for a daily. And inside the cabin is just so quiet, and it is true what people already said when E-Tron was launched. It's one of the quieter electric car in that era, so between 2019 and 2022, and I think the driving dynamics is also not that bad, but it just cannot hide its weight. So it weighs over 2.2 tons. It's almost 2.5 tons. But having said that, as we all knew, people always said like electric cars have lower center of gravity. That's true, because the battery is really down low, but that battery also weighs a lot. So yeah, it is actually a very good car, a very good daily car, especially if you use it in the town, in the city, and with the range between 240 in the winter until 300 kilometers in the summer is quite usable. The boot is actually perfect, and you can transport 5 people without complaint. So it is actually quite a big car. And also like the sound system is actually decent. My E-Tron didn't have an upgraded sound system, also it's a normal Audi sound system, but because the cabin is so quiet, even like a normal mediocre sound system sounds okay. It sounds decent for the car. And yeah, otherwise some problems, I had some electronic problems, but it was not really a deal breaker, I guess, because for me, if the car starts in the morning when I want to go to work, that's actually good enough. And like if it doesn't really break, if it's still rolling, I don't mind. And about the charging, if you are wondering, E-Tron is charging actually when it's almost empty. It's gonna charge at around 125 until 135 kilowatt hour. So I remind you, this is a Audi e-tron 50 Quattro. It's not the 55, so it doesn't charge as fast as the 55 one, but it holds its speed until around 80%. Start from 75, 80%, it will go down to 100 kilowatt hour, which is still fast. So this consistency of the charging speed, I find, is quite nice. And on a lot of road trips, I needed around 20 until 30 minutes to go from around 40% in until 95%, and it's also quite good. And because where I charge, there's like literally a McDonald's right beside it, so it was never a hassle. So yeah, and that's about it. That's my owner's review, quite honest review of Audi e-tron 50 Quattro. By the way, I just took a look in the YouTube analytics. I just saw that around 0.3% of you subscribe and the 99.7% don't. So I would like to encourage you today to subscribe to this channel if you like this video, so you won't miss a future release, because this summer, heading into the autumn, there are gonna be new cars coming, so you don't want to miss out. That's why subscribe, click the bell button, and please like this video, as because it's helping me as content creator. So See you in the next video. Until then, stay safe and keep on driving.